All right, we'll open it up for discussion now. Paul, go ahead.
Hi, Kenny. First of all, thank you very much for that teaching. I thought that was very good, and I enjoyed it. And it certainly ties in with some of the things I'm working on just now. I could see that that book was by, was it John Mark Comer, who also did Practicing the Way. And as you were going through that, I did tie it back to that because that is my focus just now. At the time that we were going through that, I thought it was going too fast for me to put in place. So I committed to actually taking that offline and spending some time on it here in the new year and starting to do things. And one of the things that he does teach in there is about um, actually starting small and focusing on subtracting the things that drain you or distract you from God, which is obviously what you're talking about here as well. So I thought that was good, and you brought out further details there, and yeah, I think that I mean I'm still working on freeing up more time where I can to spend it on some of the things that I in practicing the way, like prayer and scripture reading and all these other things. I'm focusing on community just now and trying to get better at reaching out and talking to people around the place. Um, and yeah, so slowly but surely putting those in place. So that it ties in very well with that, and I thank you for that. Um, One of the things that I was thinking about as well, and I think you touched on it as well. In fact, I'm pretty sure you touched on it. That is when you are distracted, um, what that means. And I just thought back on the parable of the sower about the person there that was that heard the word and took it to heart, and but then let it go because the worries of life, which is your distractions and the things that are taking your time, came along and took over that person's focus and let that go. And I think that's a really important focus for getting time and taking these things on board and making them part of you. I think that's why it's really important to do that. And the beautiful thing is that um, when you are doing these things, you're feeling less guilty and your heart is more aligned with God and God's will. So interestingly enough, you actually feel better doing these things than you think you might, uh, compared with watching Netflix or whatever you know that you could be doing. So it really is a win-win for you doing this, you know. Um, and also, yeah, and if you're doing the things that are commanded, you're also benefiting others, which is what the loving your neighbours yourself is greatly about. So yeah, thank you very much for that, Kenny. I really appreciated that.
Thank you, Paul. Those are really good thoughts, and yeah, that the teaching that Jesus taught about, the seed and all that really does tie in really well as also. And yeah, there's just so much things in life that can steal our time. And you mentioned Netflix and such. I One of the things I looked up with this research was the average amount of time that people spend with TV per day. And in the US, it's 3 hours. Different European countries, it's different, and different parts of the world is different. But at least where I live, it's 3 hours per day. And then social media time is on average 2 hours per day. And then there's video games and on and on and on it goes. It's like, and there was a thing I saw. It was a quote from someone that worked at Netflix, and they said, who's your biggest competitor?" And they said, "Sleep, not another company, sleep," because that's what dominated more people's time than Netflix.
Yeah,
Uh,
wow. Thanks. Thanks, Kenny.
so they want to hope you not sleep and watch more Netflix. Let's see. I think Steve and Phyllis are up next.
Yes, Kenny. Thanks for your teaching. Your teaching was very good. It's almost like in a series, along with what Samuel taught, what Suzanne taught, and what George taught about the kingdom. And looking at this, correct priorities is the key. And if we have correct priorities, there will be God's priorities. And God's priority is kingdom first. And if we learn what the kingdom is and in the right perspective, we will start to put our priorities in line and not be tossed to and fro with the everyday worries of our society, and do what is best. And a lot of times it'll be a lot less and prioritizing correctly. So I think that was a great teaching. And like I said before, what George has taught and what Suzanne taught and what Samuel taught is all falling in line as correct priorities with the kingdom.
And what I like to say is I'm just so excited about how we are growing and we are seeing how all of this comes together, learning about what the kingdom is and how it works, but also what kingdom living looks like today. Because so many times, you know, we can say the words, we can quote the scriptures, but when it comes down to, okay, how do I apply it right here and now? What does it look like? And really making us just look and question those things. I feel that we are growing in this perspective now, and I'm excited about it. It's good. And the last thing I like to say, in terms of priority, I'm asking myself, where is my heart? You know, where is it really? Because it's going to be somewhere. But where is it? And especially in terms of priority, where is it first? Because it can get tied up with many things, even good things. But my heart being with the Lord is the top priority. It should be. It has to be. And otherwise, the other good things even can become distractions. So thanks, Kenny.
Thank you, Steve and Phyllis. Really good points. And yeah, Steve, I do feel like there's been kind of a theme and everyone's been kind of on the same wavelength. And I think that just shows that God's working on all of our hearts to lead us towards the kingdom. And I'm seeing more and more, even in just Christianity as a whole, this kingdom focus, which is really cool to see. And, you know, there's lots of great teachers out there, you know, John Mark Comer and N.T. Wright and so many others that are really kind of pushing this kingdom message. And it's, you know, once you kind of see that from scripture and buy into it, it kind of changes everything. So Suzanne is up next.
Yeah, thanks. You mentioned N.T. Wright. I'm reading his book, Surprised by Hope. And yeah, it's great the way he lays out how Christians around the world are utterly confused and have been for a long time because they think God's going to destroy the earth and they're going to go to heaven. And so why does it matter what you do here? Might as well just, you know, not care about being a steward for the planet. But that's beside the point of what I was going to say. So good book. As you were talking, I kept thinking about like Jesus's example. I don't think there's any place in any of the Gospels where we see Jesus run. Maybe somebody can correct me. Where, I mean, you would even think he might run to help somebody or, you know, like for a good reason, right? But no, he never ran. And it was pointed out to me one time, like in a sermon, I think some years ago, about how most of the great miracles that Jesus performed were when he was interrupted on his way to doing something or going somewhere. And he took the time to be in the moment and to stop and not worry about, oh my gosh, I got to hurry up and get to like save Jairus's daughter. I can't talk to this woman with the issue of blood or whatever, you know. So I think, you know, what we're supposed to do is follow Jesus's example of how he lived on the daily, you know, day to day. Like how did he had crowds pressing on him and he got tired, you know, he worked hard, he was busy, right? Because he said, my Father has kept working until now and I keep working. So we have this example of Jesus working hard, but then we see him so often drawing off by himself in a lonely place or spending a whole night somewhere by himself praying, he would just kind of disappear and his boys would go like, where is he? I don't know. Like, like he wouldn't like to tell everybody where he was. And I feel like the key to really having a strong relationship with God and Christ is in those quiet times that you stop the busyness, slow down your thoughts, and whatever it takes to just have that time. And it's not just prayer. I mean, prayer is really important. And Jesus did like go off to pray, but there are, when you look at Deuteronomy and how God's people were told to meditate on his word all day. Like when you wake up, you talk about it. When you're out walking on the road with your child, you're talking to them, you're writing it on your heart. It's, it's like, it's just permeating every aspect of your life while you're doing your dishes, while you're vacuuming the floor. What are you thinking about? You should be meditating on his word. And I love to keep going back to Psalm 1 because that's kind of the formula. It says that if you're meditating on his word day and night, then you become like a tree planted by these streams of water, and it just is life-giving, flowing thing that's going through. So no matter what you face in life, whatever you're dealing with, you'll still be productive and prosperous, not in a material, monetary way, but just in a spiritual way. And just growing strong spiritually. So I just feel like, it's just like what you were talking about. There's this balance between being really busy and being quiet and still. But we can look at Jesus' example. There are times when we need to be very busy, and we should be. But then there are other times when we need to not be busy. So I think that could be something that we can all pray about, like for God to help us, give us the wisdom. It's just like in Psalm 90 where he says, give us the wisdom to know how to, count our days. So we bring that heart of wisdom in. And that's a day by day thing. It's not like, what should I do for my life as a career or a big thing? It's like, what do I do right now, today? How do I bring wisdom into, what the things I have on my to-do list today? And I also think it's super important to allow space for divine appointments and for God to be able to step in, like Jesus, like he's on his way to somewhere and somebody interrupts him. We need to like not be in such a hurry that we don't realize that God is using us in that moment to help somebody. It's like driving by the person who's on the side of the road who needs help, and we're just like, oh, I'm too busy to stop and help them. But we if God nudges us and says, hey, pull over and stop, help this person, we need to be available to God and listen to that. So those are just all things I'm just always bringing to my own mind to remind myself, because I am the number one person for being too busy. I'm the poster child for busyness.
Thanks, Suzanne. Yeah, I'm the same way. I push myself to be busy. I feel like I'm doing something wrong if I'm not busy all the time. So, as typical, usually when I share something, it's more teaching to myself than to anyone else. Samuel, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Kenny, for the teaching. And, there was one point. Usually, the way that I teach and the way that I speak is that there's one thing that I want to focus on, but then everyone's been making such great points. And Suzanne, you're right. Nowhere, every time that Jesus is doing something, he's walking, he's never running. That's something that was also pointed out to me in a sermon. This pastor, he has a word of the year that he gives to his church. And I think in 2019, it was stride, not strive, stride, Stride. And he talked about, one of his messages was the pace of grace, which means that whatever the pace that God sets for you in a season, he will grace you for that pace. So sometimes you're going to have grace for a slower season, but then whenever God needs you to speed up, he'll grace you for that. And so it's really good. The one point that I wanted to make was that I think something that's really important to realize is that there is a big difference between resting and distraction. And so, because oftentimes what happens is you think to yourself, well, I didn't do anything today. Why am I feeling anxious? But watching or just worrying for 10 hours is doing something. It's taking up emotional and mental space. That's one thing. And another thing is oftentimes watching Netflix or doom scrolling isn't resting. What you're really doing is just distracting yourself from feeling what you don't want to feel. And so instead of just distracting yourself, you need to allow yourself to have a space where you can just process whatever it is that you're feeling or whatever it is that you're thinking about. And it's funny because this just came to me as I was waiting for it to speak, is that, if you say the word dissociating, everybody knows that that's a bad thing. And everybody knows that that's not something you want to do. You shouldn't dissociate. But if you think about it, whenever you're distracting yourself with social media or just some other kind of media, really what you're doing is a soft form of dissociation because you're numbing yourself so you don't have to feel what you don't want to feel. And so I think it's really important to, like everyone's saying, instead of I got home from work, I'm tired, so therefore let me turn off my brain and watch something. Instead, it's just let me sit with, my day and be able to process that so that then you can truly rest and get it out of your system, process it, and then just have that peaceful slumber at night, and a peaceful night. And so I think all of this was good. I love everybody's comments and yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Samuel. Good stuff. As always, you have wisdom well beyond your years. So I always appreciate it. Rosalind, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add some words to what Samuel said, because I was listening to this researcher or scientist, like somebody who studies the topic, but he decided he wanted to study the topic rest, and he was on television here in Norway not too long ago, and he said what Samuel said, but he sort of talked a bit more about it, and he also said like reading a book or being on your phone or watching TV, like not that is not resting because you're occupying your mind with other things. And so you're resting your physical body, but not actually resting your mind. And in order to get to that place of rest where you can actually start to hear from God and feel His presence, you have to first sort of declutter your mind with all the impressions, or all the thoughts and everything that keeps coming up when you don't do anything. And he said, first, when you just sit there or just lie there, not doing anything, all these thoughts will just like keep coming to your mind, distracting you. And you have to sort of allow that to sort of happen and not fall for the temptation to just like, oh, I can't, nothing's happening. I'm just like having all these thoughts, but to allow it to happen, and then your mind will calm down. And when your mind has calmed down, that's when you can start to actually hear from God and feel His presence. And I mean, this is, the guy wasn't talking about God, but he did say after that phase, that's when you start to become productive and like you start to get creative, and you start to have all these like the drive of wanting to like do things that you didn't want to do prior to it, having that time of rest. And so I found it like really interesting, just how our mind works, and how we can help ourselves to actually enter God's rest, which is easier said than done sometimes. But yeah, I think it's just a matter of practice, and yeah, to not be tempted to just like, oh, don't want to just like lie here and do nothing, or sit here and do nothing. So, and yeah, anyway, that's what I wanted to say.
Thanks, Rosalind. It's good thoughts. Yeah. Good stuff to think about. And yeah, this is kind of something I think we'll just have to continue to think about and refocus on again and again through life. So, well, I don't see any other hands up. I'll go ahead and close out the recording. So thanks all for discussing and being part of the topic here. So thanks for joining us.